For everyone present online, thank you. Welcome to the Norfolk Advisory Committee's meeting this evening. We are recording this both audibly and visually, so please keep that in mind. I am Arthur Franzak, the chair of the Advisory Committee, and with me tonight, I will go through the roll call list just to make sure we have a quorum and folks are aware of who's whom. We will start with Kristen. Kristen Balish, please say present.
Present.
Fantastic. Brian Beachkowski.
Present.
I am. Michael Huff.
Present.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Present.
Thank you. Jackie Katz.
Present.
Susan Klein.
Present.
David Lutz.
I am here.
And Kiara Moore.
Here.
Thank you, Kiara. And we're also joined tonight by many people, including Blythe Robinson, our town administrator, and Todd Lindmark. Thanks to you both for joining us. So my little preamble includes reminding people that we are meeting online due to the executive order by Governor Baker to help us accommodate the state of emergency due to the COVID-19 virus. Online, we ask that people please raise your hand if you have a question. After a particular presentation is made on the agenda, I look to the Zoom feature where if you look at your little list of names in the participants list, if you click on the participants button, you should be able to raise your hand. I will call on people in the order which I see them, and I will typically go through the advisory committee once to make sure that we get some questions out of the way, and then go to the general public, anyone who's joined us tonight. Please keep it additive. The meetings can definitely grow in length compared to in person, especially when we are covering the same material but from some different angles. So appreciate people respecting that rule. I encourage people to ask a question and then ask a follow-up question if you have one, and then let other people get in their questions. You can raise your hand again if you have a list or several points that you would like to make beyond the initial two. I believe that concludes my preamble, and the agenda tonight includes Article 7. Article 9, we'll then do 1 through 3. We will then assign articles for writing, and we don't have that long a list this cycle, so appreciate folks at that point volunteering. Our time frame for this is we're looking to get articles written and in by, I think we want them no later than Tuesday, so how about like end of day Monday at the latest would be great. This coming Monday for people to submit their articles. If you could submit them to Amy and myself, we will send out a reminder email that contains the email addresses. And then the last item on the agenda for tonight are any minutes we have to review and approve. Any questions about our agenda before I get started? Looking for those hands, those beautiful hands. Okay, seeing none, let's get started with Article 7. I will engage the screen share doohickey. Stand by for. Okay. And there we go. Scrolling down to Article 7. And this involves accepting Silver Fox Road as a public way. I know there was discussion last week about this, some wetlands issues and such. David, I'll give it to you to start off. Did you have questions still? I know you were going to do some research or poke around a bit.
I'm sorry, not me.
I'm sorry, I thought you had questions about Silver Fox Road. Oh, okay.
No.
It's Arthur. I think you have the number wrong. It's not, we already voted on Silver Fox Run being accepted. We're discussing the rec department field acquisition.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
Correct.
what,
Yes.
that's what he had questions on. I'm not sure the number. I don't have it in front of me.
Thank you, Susan.
That would make a lot
I
more
was
sense.
taken aback.
So the numbers changed last night because the select board decided to put together Articles 1 and 3.
That's right. So everything is subtracted a number. Sorry. Yes. So
That's okay. I have a photographic memory, so let me know if you need any help.
Thank you. I'll hit the Susan Klein recall button often. Okay, so Article 6. Formally.
At the last meeting, I did raise some concerns about the wetlands issues related to the map and the purchase that's being proposed. I'm still concerned about it. I did look at the map. I tried to do as good a comparison as I could between what I had from the purchase that was proposed and what I could see from the GIS stuff. I still have some concerns. I'm not necessarily going to oppose this tonight, but I do want to say that before this goes before town meeting, the Recreation Department and the CPC need to get kind of a presentation together that's more comprehensive than what we saw at the meeting last week. They need a map that maps everything, the boundaries, the wetlands. If there is potential field layouts, that has to be added to it. This has the potential to be a real issue at town meeting, and I don't want it to become that. I think the price per acre is a good price on this. I just don't want people to start nitpicking on whether you can do anything with this. I personally would be thrilled to have access to the Stop River off of some town land, which is a potential for this purchase. I don't have any kids who play anything anymore, but I understand the pressure on the fields. I just don't want us to buy something that aspirationally is great, but practically might not work out.
Understood. There are several people here who perhaps can speak to some of those issues. Does anybody want to ask David a question or any material people want to share?
I can start.
Yes, Will. Thank you.
Will. So I appreciate the concerns. I obviously think they're valid questions, fair questions. I don't want to jump the gun on it though. So I think kind of from Rec's perspective at this point in time, while it is aspirational, I think we have to step back and take a look at what we're getting. So we have a price that you're not going to find for acreage. It's $400 an acre. I mean, it's
I totally agree.
And I think when you look at that low of a price, plus obviously the cost of surveying and such, the value of having the land in the town's hands, regardless of what you can do with it, has a value greater than what we're going to be paying for it. So even if we can't do anything on it, which we know we're not going to be able to do nothing with it, we're going to be able to do something with it. There's a lot of value in having that, especially considering what the parcel's worth. And I don't know why we would ever want to keep that land with the state when we could, as the town, control it and kind of control our own destiny, so to speak, with what we do. And just conservation value alone, I think it has value. But I agree with you. I know Anne's on the call and she has, we haven't done nothing with looking at this parcel. It's been looked at for the last decade. We have an open space and rec plan that tells us what we need, what we'd like to do with it. So I could kind of turn it over to Anne to talk a little bit about that. But I just wanted to emphasize from our perspective, outside of what rec can do, conservation and control of the land alone for the price we're paying makes it worth it in my mind.
I think you're muted, Anne.
There we go.
All right, there we go.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So clearly we know that this land does have a significant amount of wetland on the property. We've known that from observation, and we also know that from the evaluation of the property that was done in 2014 and 15 when we were looking at the initial purchase of 5 acres. So at that time, we were looking at the 5 acres with the master plan that we had done for recreation in 2013 and taken that data and sort of looked at the 5 acres, like what can we do with that 5 acres and how can we lay it out? And one of the things that we quickly realized, because of the wetlands and because 5 acres was very limiting, we really couldn't do a lot of field expansion because we only had 5 acres. We couldn't get to some of the, the drier land. And I actually did send maps that were done by DCAM back then to is it Amy? I'm sorry, Miss Sheehan, to view. And I do have them. I don't know if it would be helpful if you can see them if I hold them up. Unfortunately, I don't have my work computer. I don't have my work computer where I can share the screen. But because the 5 acres because of the wetlands, we were very limited in what we could do. So that's when we started talking, when there was a possibility of acquiring more land, it would allow us to have more flexibility on how we laid out whatever we did. And in 2013, when we did the master rec plan, it was determined that we needed a soccer field. They suggested, and they suggested an artificial turf field because we have so much use for soccer. And it was also determined that we needed another Babe Ruth field. Now, when I say another Babe Ruth field, it's not just expansion. It was reallocating different spaces, both at Freeman Kennedy and at Pond Street. So combined, we would have the need. So this is actually one of the maps. So if you see the yellow outlined area were just ideas of where we could put things when we only had 5 acres. But you can also see the blue lines with the wetlands that we couldn't go that close. We did actually do wetland delineation back in 2015. Now it's not, but it was only for the 5 acres. It's not valid for this purchase, but we did look at those things. So just going back to what we determined with the master plan, we were looking at field space. There was also an open space and recreation plan done by the town, done by CPC in the town in 2017. So there's a big difference between the plans. When you have an open space and recreation plan, as I'm sure you all know, it encompasses all recreation land in the town, all open space. It's a lot, there's a lot of detail about conservation and wetlands and habitats. In that plan, and that was done in 2017, next to having a swimming pool, the most requested item on the survey that was done was trails, specifically bike trails. So if we acquired this land and it was determined that we could not expand a field, if we could not add a field, if we only had trails there, clearly we would be meeting a need of many residents. And I think that's what recreation is trying to do. We're trying to meet the needs and the wants of as many residents as possible. Some of that is maybe with active recreation fields. I think a lot of it may be passive recreation, such as trails. And to your point, Dave, we have absolutely spoken about possible access to Stop River and what that would do. We have very little, if any, public access to our waterways that is safe and easy to get to and has parking and all those things. Very little.
That's very helpful. Thank you, and appreciate the map. Any questions that people have about the information or other items that relate to this land acquisition? Don't see any hands
I
up.
do.
Oh, okay, in the public, thank you. Yes, Mr. Turi, please go ahead.
Yeah, as chairman of conservation, I wanted to kind of support what Ann was saying. Conservation has taken a more proactive interest in providing trails to the community. And we've just finished doing Campbell Forest with trail maintenance, upgrading it, new trail on it, signage. We're doing the same thing for Lynn Farm, which is a big piece of land. And bikers use it, dirt bikers on, regular bicycle trail bikes. And I see this as, because there are wetlands, that whole wetland area would be a spot for the conservation to work with Ann Proto, or recreation, I should say, to develop those other areas with more trails and access into the land. And because of the COVID, more and more people are walking our trails, and this would just enhance it for the community.
Very nice. Thank you. David, you had a question, Mr. Lutz.
I'm going to ask a couple questions if you don't mind. Since I didn't write it down because I didn't have, what is the per acre price again?
400.
400. Okay. And then to follow up a little bit on what Mr. Turi had to say, I think that the Recreation Department and maybe the Conservation Commission together need to develop an open space, a passive recreation open space plan, because Lynn Farm has been in the town's possession for, I've been here for 20 years, and it was like, I think the 21 years, or I think it was the year I moved here. There are some open space subdivisions that have trails. All of these things need to be highlighted. If you live in a neighborhood with an open space subdivision and the trail's right behind you, you know where it is, but no one else does. And I think that's not the point of an open space subdivision. So if the town owns the land and it's got trails on it or is protected as open space, it's kind of, it would be important, I think, for the Recreation Department and the Conservation Commission, who has control of most of the open space that we own that's not recreation, to get together and try to develop a better plan on pushing that stuff forward. So just a comment, as I said in my original presentation tonight, I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I just want to see a better plan, and I really am concerned about coming to town meeting. I'm less concerned now than I was 20 minutes ago, but I'm really concerned about coming to town meeting without being able to define and describe some of the things that have been talked about in the last 20 minutes. So
Understood. Thank you. I think Cindy has something she wanted to add. Yes, Cindy. You are muted still.
Okay, I'm here now.
All right.
Yes, and honestly, it's not really related to the actual land. My comment was going to be related to the cost. So as we know, and was just mentioned, the cost per acre is $400, which comes to $17,200. And as you see, we actually wrote our warrant for $100,000. We wrote it that way because it came to us very quickly. And we had no idea what the town, at that point, what the town would be responsible for with regard to any kind of surveying, wetlands mapping. We had no idea what our legal costs, we had no idea. So we just bumped it out to really be able to accommodate anything. My suspicion is that it's going to be much less than that. I've received a quote for surveying, and that came in a little over $20,000. We have to do a MIPA ENF filing, which is an environmental report with the state. I'm working on getting a quote for that. And if I can get a good handle on the legal costs, we don't expect to be a lot. And if I can get a good handle on the cost estimates, my hope would be that I could go to town meeting and have a more reasonable, I don't want to say reasonable, a more definable estimate on the total costs. So I just wanted to add that in as kind of a point of information.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you. Yeah, I get the sense we're being a little opportunistic here. We think it's a solid value from what you've described, and we want to get this. And then as to the future uses, I don't know, I've seen in certain town meetings, people can get nervous about like what this is actually authorizing. Like, oh, okay, so are we going to get something and then we're stuck, we can't do anything with it? Is one concern that you guys have already addressed about it has a lot of passive value, but you do believe based on earlier studies, some consideration that this has use. And then you get the other side of the coin sometimes where it's like, these are beautiful wetlands, you're going to put a, I don't know, pave it all over and build a parking lot, you know, or I don't know what. So sometimes I think it's helpful just to say, you know, have the Conservation Commission maybe there and just say, yes, we're going to do our due diligence. You can trust the oversight process. If folks have specific questions, please attend the meeting that'll be publicly posted by the Conservation Commission about this when it comes through, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes folks want to have a specific input, and this doesn't have a ton of specificity, so it's nice to direct them as to when that opportunity will then be. But that's my little soapbox speech there. Any other questions people had about this that, I don't know, anyone, Cindy or anyone else can respond to while we have them here? Okay, seeing no hands up, I will, oh yes, Mr. Huff.
Just question, just about the timeliness, like, just so I have the information. We have the opportunity to do it now. Is the offer expiring or, so I mean, maybe I should say from the outside, I think it's a really good idea, but what's the timing? It's just come up now or it has to be done soon?
So I can speak to that. I mean, this has been in discussion, this piece of legislation, this parcel of land. As early as 2013, this bill itself originated 2018, thereabouts. It was passed in August. I'm looking at the date now. It says it was approved August 6, 2020. I don't believe that there are any sunsets on this bill as far as outside of what normally would apply. So I think the last one had some sort of sunset on it. This one doesn't, as far as I know. But to get it passed, to get the process started is of benefit to us.
We would like to know that we own the land before we start spending money trying to determine what we can do with the land.
Excellent point. Especially when you get into surveying and legal costs and all that. So, yeah. All righty. Any other questions from the advisory committee or anyone from the public here tonight? Seeing no hands up virtually or people madly waving at their video camera, I would like to thank David, Will, and Ann for joining us with the information. I don't know, we can take care of business as we go. I'm willing to entertain a motion if somebody wants to.
I would like to make a motion that we approve Article 6 with the provision or the understanding that we may be amending it on the night of the meeting based on what Cindy can further define for costs. Cindy and other town entities, I would hope that maybe the conservation agent might be able to help Cindy out. That's directed at Mr. Turi. So I'll make that motion.
Understood. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, that's Jonathan Hurwitz, I believe. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion. Discussion on the motion. Any hands up? Anyone want to share additional thoughts? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of approving Article 6, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say
Aye.
nay. All opposed, say nay. Okay, it is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay, we will now go on to Article 8, probably, right? Because the renumbering. It's the Citizens Petition. Let me switch here. And this is short and sweet. My goodness, this is nice and brief. Okay, to see if the town will vote to amend the general bylaws. Okay, no person shall keep any bird, fowl, or other animal which by barks, howls, or other noises, I like this language, disturbs the peace and quietness between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. of any resident who lives or works within 750 feet of the animal. Such noise must be deemed excessive and continuous for at least 15 minutes. Do we have the petitioner with us tonight, Blythe? You are muted. Oh, I see a hand going up. Hello.
Hi, I'm Erica. I'm the
Hello,
petitioner.
Erica. Hey.
Hi.
Hi. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to speak to the specific language here and kind of
Sure.
where you're coming from?
Sure. So originally, the bylaw that's on the town bylaw currently, it was written in 1936. And it did not have any of the specifics here. It did not have a time frame. It did not have any sort of area that the person needed to live with, and it didn't have any sort of excessive and continuous. So it was just that anyone within the town could complain about any bird, fowl, barking, howl that bothered their peace and quiet. So what I'm looking to do is update this to a more current standard where we would have quiet hours similar to construction noise. So construction noise is not allowed between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. And then the person would need to live or work within the area so that it's not just somebody walking by your home complaining, or somebody maybe you made mad in town and they want to complain. And then the excessive and continuous is, you know, if your dog's outside at 10 o'clock and barks at a raccoon, if it's not going on for 15 plus minutes, then you're okay.
Okay. Very helpful. I see we have some hands up already. Susan, yes, your question.
Erica, hi. Thank you for coming and speaking to us tonight. I've been following what you've been suggesting on Facebook, on the community page and different things. So I'm well aware of what you're asking for. I did have one question, not because I personally care. I just want to be prepared at town meeting if it comes up. Is this a suggestion that you came up with because you've dealt with this? Like, have you had this happen to you? And the reason I'm asking is not to put you on the spot or to have you tattle on any of your neighbors or anything like that. I'm just wondering how much of an issue it is. Not that it matters. Obviously, you can change a bylaw for any reason. I'm just curious if it's been an issue in our town, and that's why we need to change it, or if it's just something you're like, hey, I want to head this off before it happens.
So I can personally say that, yes, this has affected me. I have a rooster, and it was reported in September 3 times to the animal control officer. I received a letter in the mail, not a citation or anything like that, just a letter informing me someone has reported your rooster. Investigating a little further, I found that the reports were made at 8:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the afternoon, and 3:45 in the afternoon. So personally, I felt that that was unfair, that my rooster making noise during the day, not excessive, being reported just didn't seem fair. So when I started investigating this and talking to different people to get people to sign the petition, I was finding more and more people having to deal with this and being reported, not just for roosters, but for dogs. And just the simple idea that it was during the day and they didn't see that it really, you know, warranted being cited for it.
Thank
Okay.
you. Follow-up
And
question,
just out of
please? Go ahead.
yes, just out of curiosity, has nothing to do with, you know, whether or not we would vote to approve your warrant. Do roosters crow all day long? I thought they, shockingly, I thought they only did it in the mornings when the sun came up.
They do. And that's because of this, I've found I'm more aware of when he crows. And it tends to be when he hears me in the house, he wants to come out. So he's in a run and he'll start crowing because he wants to come out, similar to a dog. So he does. He crows from, you know, when I let him out in the morning, 8 o'clock, he'll crow a couple of times at 8 o'clock. And then throughout the day, a few times here, a few times there, all the way, I'd say, until about 5 o'clock. And then he's quiet for the rest of the night.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting. And we're all increasing our rooster knowledge tonight. Thank you. Brian, yes, Mr. Bichkowski, go ahead, your question.
Thank you for bringing this up. One thing that struck me when you said the way this is written, it would have to be someone making the complaint who lives within 750 feet of the animal. And the way I read it, it doesn't actually address that piece that you talked about. It says that the animal has to be within 750 feet of any resident, but it doesn't make a qualification on who is allowed to make the complaint. Just want to make sure we clarify that in the language. Based on what you said, it seems like it would be a different intent here. Anyone could make a complaint of a noise if that noise originated within 750 feet of another resident.
Okay, I can understand that. So I'm not familiar with doing this. I'm not familiar with writing these. So I can understand that because that is the intent, that the complainant would need to live or work within 750 feet of the animal.
So given that, would you want an opportunity to update the language, or I'd be interested in your thoughts if this doesn't meet that aspect of your intent? Would you want to still carry forward with this, or would you prefer time to update the language?
I'm okay with it. I've been working on this for a month now and working out the language. So if there's an issue with it, you know, I don't know how to respond to that, but.
Well, that said, I'm not the town council and I might be wrong in my interpretation of what this is. So it's just, I see an opening there for someone to say that. So thanks.
Very quickly, David Torrey, did you have a point you wanted to raise?
I might suggest that only one word be changed, and that's between the hours of 7 p.m., 7 a.m. by instead of any residents who live or work.
Oh, interesting.
And that kind of clarifies it.
Thank you. Yeah, that does, I think, make it more specific. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next question. I think, David, I believe, Susan, did you have your hand up again, or was that just from before? Susan Klein.
That's just from before.
Okay, I will.
I'm on my cell phone, so I'm not sure how to lower it on my cell phone.
No problem. Mr. Lutz, yes, David, go right ahead.
Erica, my only comment is that 15 minutes is a long time. I have neighbors that I've considered calling on under the previous or the current noise ordinance who let their dogs out between the hours of 5 and 6, and that those dogs bark the entire time they're out, but it tends to be 10 minutes. But at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm up at that point. I'm wide awake and not going back to sleep. What motivated 15 minutes? I mean, if it's a dog or a rooster, frankly, 15 minutes it gets everyone up at that point. So
I looked at previous other towns' bylaws, and from those, they ranged from 10 minutes to 20 minutes to 30 minutes. So I went in and just put a 15-minute, thinking that was, right in the middle.
Still gets me up.
Understood. Did you have a follow-up question there, David?
No, I'm fine.
Wow, 30 minutes. That's intense. Okay, Kristen, yes, go ahead with your question. You are muted. There we
Yeah,
go.
I think I had a similar reaction, which is 15 minutes feels like a long time when it's a dog barking. And I have a dog, so I'm sympathetic to it. So I actually just want to say thank you for doing this. I previously to this committee, I was on town government study. And one of the things that committee had kind of thought about was the fact that a lot of our bylaws are from 1936. And we had talked about needing a real concerted effort as a town to really go through them, each one, and kind of say which ones of these don't even make sense anymore. We haven't had the resources as a town to do that. So I appreciate you and other residents taking this on. So thank you for that. I was curious about, you talked about basing this on other towns. You said this also was based a bit on the construction one. Does the construction bylaw, I know it is from 7 to 7, but what does it say about the continuous for 15 minutes in terms of?
The construction bylaw has no time frame.
Okay.
So that is just between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. There is, rules about, operation of equipment, heavy machinery, trucks, trailers, dump trucks, that they're just not allowed to work between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Okay, so it is a little bit different. It's apples to oranges. And then my question is more of a procedural one, and maybe it's a Blythe question, I'm not sure. Neither the old bylaw nor the new addresses who enforces this. Is that intentional in terms of how the bylaw should work? And maybe that's not a question for Erica, but I'm wondering if it's intentional that doesn't really say what the remedy is.
Let's start with Erica's intention. Did you have any sense of that, Erica? Or
From my understanding, the reports go to the animal control officer, and that's from what I understand. That's who
Okay.
would handle this.
Got it. Blythe, yes, any comments?
Sure. I haven't really had a chance to talk to town council about this very in depth, but what I do understand is that if it's a dog barking issue, yes, animal control is always going to be the first point of contact to investigate and follow up and hopefully reach resolution, get the animal to stop making the noise and everyone to be satisfied. But if not, a dog barking under state law is going to go to the select board currently under our bylaws to deal with what's considered might be considered a nuisance dog. But I believe any other animal issues would go to the Board of Health.
And that group would be the one that decides if it's considered excessive and continuous?
I'm sorry?
And who would decide if it's excessive and continuous? Who makes that determination?
That we haven't really dug into yet. I can't answer that.
Okay.
We'll have to talk with town council, be prepared to discuss that at town meeting.
Okay, great, thank you.
They have specialists in the Rooster division of the health department. Sorry, I'm just kidding. Okay.
I would not be surprised.
Thank you. Mr. Lutz, another question. Yes, sir.
I have a kind of a specific question and then a general question for Blythe. Actually, I'll ask the general question first. Blythe, you mentioned at the last meeting or 2 meetings ago that the selectmen were considering our broader animal control bylaw. Would this be part of that consideration, the noise issues, or is it focused on other issues?
So the primary reason, we've already drafted an update to this, all of Article 13, and we did that because in 2020 we had a couple of dog issues specifically, and realized that the state law changed in 2012 and our bylaws hadn't changed with it. So we approached Article 13 from that perspective, and in that draft we had not made any changes to this section. Having said that, if this is going to town meeting, and let's say for some reason either a town meeting doesn't choose to pass it, or the Attorney General's office, it passes and Attorney General's office doesn't approve it and it doesn't go into law. The next step could be one of two things. Either someone could ask the select board to consider changing this section in the version we're going to bring in the spring, and the board could decide to support that. Or if they say thanks, but we don't agree, we don't want to change it, then a citizen petition could come again to the annual town meeting to say, I want to change this particular section, and I've got a petition for that.
Arthur, my specific question is, it relates to enforcement, and no one may be able to answer this right now, but can these complaints be made anonymously? Because this is all neighborhood stuff, so.
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe Blythe would need to research that or something.
I would point someone to the police department as to why they release some information and why they don't. Others, I haven't had a chance to talk to the chief about it, but I think he'd be the one to expound on that.
Oh, are these like 911 calls?
They're not, I hope they're not 911 calls, but.
Blythe, you just mentioned the police. I'm wondering, how do they get involved?
Because the animal control officer is a member of the police department, and they would issue a report if there was to be one for whatever the call or situation was. So I would say that the chief needs to or someone in the department is best one to weigh in on what information is released in a public report and what is not.
Erica, maybe you can answer that question because you've had complaints, obviously.
What I can say is I was not given the information of who made the complaint.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Kiara, yes, your question.
Thanks, and thank you, Erica, for bringing this forward. I definitely appreciate the intention behind it. I was just wondering if this would apply equally to residences as well as to agricultural properties in town.
So as the bylaw states right now, it didn't separate either one of those. So my understanding would be that yes, but I don't know. This is the only bylaw that I was focusing on. I don't know if there are additional ones that speak specifically to agricultural.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a follow-up question on that, Kiara?
No, thank you.
Okay, and just to add one point to that line of thinking. So as it is now, okay, let me say it this way. This is putting more kind of boundaries. This is making an existing provision, which is pretty open-ended, more specific. So, I mean, my guess is if you're living next to, I don't know, Chicken City or in Norfolk somewhere, or if you're next to a ranch or something, that this isn't going to suddenly make something possible that wasn't before. In fact, if anything, this makes it more limited in what it is that you might do.
Yeah, I think the part that gave me pause is the 15 minutes. Like if you are on a farm and you're slaughtering animals, it's going to take longer than 15 minutes and it's going to be loud. And so just, yeah, an additional consideration.
Yeah, the 15 minutes is an interesting idea. I mean, I know I was thinking about what Dave was saying, and obviously if something is howling every 5 seconds, if that goes on for 15 minutes, I agree that seems like cruel and unusual punishment. However, when I first read 15 minutes, what I was thinking is some creature howls, and then 10 minutes later it howls again. So it's trying to make sparse howling kind of complainable as opposed to trying to make somebody's ears bleed or something horrible for, so we don't want people to skirt it by only having one really annoying croon every 16 minutes or something, or I don't know. That was my thinking. Okay, thank you. Next question, Susan. Yes, go right ahead.
They've sort of not really been answered, but skirted around a couple of things. One, 15 minutes is, again, I mean, it's not arbitrary on Erica's part, but it is arbitrary in general. Not her putting it in there, that's in general. If a leaf blower starts blowing at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're awake instantly. Same as if a dog starts barking at 5 a.m., you're awake instantly. It really doesn't matter whether it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes. I think it's just to keep, a neighbor from constantly complaining every single day, but it doesn't really protect you if you happen to live next door to someone who gets up at 4:30 in the morning and lets their dog out every day at that time. So I think you're going to be faced with at town meeting that piece of it is very arbitrary. So you may want to consider not having a time limit in there at all, since the current bylaw doesn't have a time limit, meaning it would be no way for people to object to your bylaw change if there isn't a time limit added. Does that make sense? I may be talking around it as well. I'm sorry.
I understand what you're saying. I can understand that point. I think my only worry is, somebody calling in a dog barking, 3 times.
No, I'm saying, I certainly know why you put the time limit in there. I'm saying that I think that the time, so you're going to have 2 camps of people. You're going to have 2 camps of people at the town meeting. The camp that says 15 minutes is too long. And then another camp of people who say 15 minutes is not long enough because my chickens make noise when they eat, or my goats make noise when they're doing X, or, things like that. So I'm just saying, I think having a time limit at all, any time limit, whether it's 0 or 15 minutes, you're going to get people who are going to object, because you're always going to have people in different camps. That was what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Just be prepared for that is all. I know you're new to this process and
Absolutely.
we're not. So we're trying to point out all of the things for you that you're going to face at town meeting. And I will say that sometimes town meetings are very, very friendly and very, very accepting, and other times they are not. So there's no real way to know which way this is going to go for you. So just wanted you to be prepared for that. I guess my second question, and Blythe kind of answered it, but I'm not really sure if it was fully. If we don't know who enforces this, how does the bylaw actually go into effect? I guess what I'm saying is if we don't know, if we don't have a plan and we don't have an idea of who people can now call if it is after 7 p.m. and how it's going to be enforced, because to my understanding, the animal control officer doesn't work nights. She works days. So who's going to handle this? It can't go to the select board every single time. It can't, it just wouldn't be possible. And I know that when they call 911, they say simply, I'm making and I need to speak to the animal control officer. But if it's after 7 p.m., which is what this is, you're just going to be leaving a message. I just not sure that we should be moving forward.
Go out on overtime.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. I was just saying, I'm not sure that without knowing how this is going to be implemented, that we should, I guess, I'm not saying we shouldn't move forward. That's not the way I'm saying it. I want to make that clear. I'm saying that it's difficult to move forward with this if we don't really fully understand how it's going to be implemented, and also be able to tell town people how this new law is going to be implemented. Does that make sense?
Let's let Blythe answer. Blythe first, and then I think Dave wants to comment very quickly. So Blythe.
So what happens, and so the animal control officer works Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. She works a 40-hour week. And depending on the call, either she can go out on an overtime basis, or someone's covering for her, that person can go out as well. And, up till now, generally, like we approach a lot of incidents in town, the goal is to get, a satisfactory resolution without, penalties or taking it to further steps. So I think, as Erica mentioned, when there was a complaint in the past, she got a letter about it. And maybe the second time, if there was an issue, and there might be a warning. We really don't go to fines and all that sort of thing unless we're not able to help solve the problem up front. It doesn't go to the select board for a hearing about a nuisance dog unless the complaining party doesn't feel like a situation has resolved, and then they make a request to have that brought to the board, and the board to make a ruling about it. And those are extremely rare. I mean, they happen, but they don't happen very often.
Understood. Thank you. And before we go on to the next question, Dave Lutz, did you have some context for this question?
Yeah, Susan, to address your question from a sort of a broader perspective, if there's no enforcement entity that's called out in the bylaw, it is always the police department. And then they dish it off if they have the, have to, but it is, if it's not actually written into the bylaw, it's the police department that is the enforcement authority.
Okay.
And can we, I know Erica really doesn't want to delve any further into expanding her warrant, but is that something that either she should add in, or in the spring when the select board takes this up, could they just amend it in a way that just adds who's going to be enforcing it? I mean, it's obvious that it should be the animal control officer. That's legitimately the obvious answer. But if it's not written in there, it makes it very vague. Kevin, do you have any input on that, since you are our select board person? I'm sorry not to put you on the spot, just asking.
Well, no, that's exactly what you did, so don't worry about it.
Sorry.
So what we're talking about doing with the animal control bylaws that we're looking at amending, I don't believe touch to this level of specificity in terms of certain assignment of specific applications. However, it's definitely something that could be considered if we're going to be going down that route anyway. But I think that the core goal here is to be able to address the petitioner's specific concern in as much of a complete nature as possible without leaning on the potential for future action. So if there's something that she wants to do to be able to more specifically highlight the intent of her petition, I think that it should be done prior to being brought before town meeting. So it's in a more complete nature. At least that's just my perspective.
So if I could add
Okay,
in,
thank you. Yes, Blythe, go ahead.
so I don't have the bylaw in front of me right this moment, but it already has references in other sections to animal control and the responsibilities of animal control. So I think that's already established as clear. But to change to the question or the point about changing what's Erica has proposed, the warrant was executed by the board last night. So we've passed the point of being able to adjust a word here or there on the written document. That would not prevent Erica from deciding to come to town meeting and make an amendment, or someone to bring an amendment to the floor and have that adjudicated through the process. It's just, by the time we got this and got it to here, we are, that opportunity had passed.
Understood. Thank you. So I think we've addressed this. If we could go on to the next question, Jonathan.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Erica. Don't take my question as either support or not support. It's just trying to understand your position on something. We talked a lot about the time frame, but I'd like to actually talk about the distance, the 750 feet. So as the author of this proposed bylaw, what would you say to somebody who lives 1,000 feet away from an animal, but the disturbance meets every other criteria for a complaint? It's excessive, it's continuous, it's daily, but that neighbor is 1,000 feet away. I'm just curious what your response would be to someone in that situation.
Unfortunately, I mean, the 750 feet I put in after doing a plot of my surrounding neighbors, and that got me 3 people down from me, 3 neighbors down from me. So that's where I came in with 750 feet. I looked at other town bylaws. They ranged anywhere from 100 feet to 1,000 feet. So I thought the 750 was a good maximum to have. I can understand that noise does travel, but that's my explanation of putting the 750 feet. It was 3 houses down from me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think my concern with that is, I don't know where you live, but the neighborhoods in Norfolk are getting to be extremely diverse. There's no longer a single, 1 acre per house kind of plot plan the way there used to be. There's a lot of density, certainly in Town Hill, there's 40 Bs going in. Your personal experience of 3 neighbors within 750 feet is going to be an awful lot different than other people in town who may have dozens of people within that radius, and sound does travel. I guess my point in raising this, and my concern with this being so specific in the bylaw on we're going to measure the distance and we're going to measure the time frame, is how neighbors can be, and what's going to happen is we're going to have dueling banjos here, right? Someone's going to be disturbed by an animal, and it will have not met the criteria of this bylaw because they live 800 feet away, or it was only deemed to be for 10 minutes. And then next town meeting, we're going to have a citizens petition to amend this, right? For that neighbor's specific needs of, well, I happen to live 850 feet away from the neighbor with the rooster, so we're going to amend this. Then that neighbor is going to get unhappy and have another amendment, and on we go. I mean, I would much rather, I appreciate what you're doing, but I think the specificity here can backfire, especially because you're drawing these numbers from your personal situation and your neighborhood and your neighbors, and it's not going to map to everybody else in town. So I do have concerns with kind of mutually assured destruction with this path that we're following, where every town meeting, someone will have a complaint that's not addressed in this bylaw and will propose an amendment to it. But
Understood.
that's my comment. Thank you.
Kristen Balish, you had a question. Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. Enemy of the good here. I do think this is an improvement on the former bylaw. So I just want to say that I do think it's an improvement. I do agree with what some other folks have been saying around the specificity potentially being problematic. I'm a big fan of bylaws being fairly general, because I think it's really hard to change a bylaw once it's been passed. And so being too specific can be problematic because it doesn't really change with the times, right? So we don't want to have to do this again in 3 years if the town looks different, right? To Jonathan's point around how close people are together. And so I actually really love the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. piece because it does mirror the construction bylaw. I'm less in love with the 7:50 and the 15 minutes because it's so specific that I think I agree it kind of works against it and, you know, is maybe too specific. So, but I really like the rest of it. And I like the fact that it is still better than what is there, but I would prefer one that was a little kind of in the middle, a little more general.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Any comments that you wanted to make kind of on the fly here, Erica, or should I keep going?
No, I'm all set.
Very good. Brian, yes, sir.
Just one other point, the 750 did stick out to me as well, largely because as a hunter, I know we have to be 500 feet away from a house for discharging any firearm or shotgun. And it just struck me that you have to be farther away from an animal to the house to be subject to the complaint than someone shooting a gun would be.
I'm not sure that the 750 is meaning like a radius that they would need to be within, not that they would be outside of that.
Well, the other way to look at it is if you're outside of that, no matter what the animal's doing, it isn't a nuisance to you, which is the purpose of the gun is not a factor for you if it's 500 feet away. That's the parity I was trying to draw, as opposed to it being an interior radius of who's allowed to make a comment.
Okay, David Lutz, you had a comment about Brian's point?
Brian, just to, I was working in the legislature when they amended that, and it was really about carriage of the ammunition, the bullet itself, rather than the noise.
Totally agree. It's not a noise issue. It's a safety thing for sure.
No, it is a safety thing. And I think that and I'm sure every single person here would argue about whether 500 feet's enough, but it wasn't a noise issue. It was, will it carry 500 feet or will it not carry 500 feet with lethal force? So
yes, and will noise carry farther than a bullet is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Interesting. Well, and that's interesting. I don't hunt in Norfolk. I do hunt regionally though, and I thought that it was 300 yards. You cannot discharge a firearm within 300 yards of a structure. That was my recollection, which is like 900 feet. But in any event.
And I thought it was 1,000 feet, but I don't know. So I can't remember the exact number. So.
Do you have a follow-up question, Brian, or are we good to go? Okay. Any other hands up from the public? Anybody who would like to get in on the discussion? Don't see any hands up here. Okay. So again, just thank you, Erica. We'll transition now to some discussion about the article. Do we have a motion on this article? And again, we need to take action based upon how it is written today. Per Blythe and other people's comments, there could be a floor motion, but per our responsibility, any motions about taking action on the article as written?
I move to approve the motion.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Chiara. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the Citizens Petition article. Discussion on the motion. I know we've had some discussion so far. Any new points people wanted to add in? Yes, Brian, go ahead.
So it's just my thinking, and I think sometimes it helps when we talk through our thinking of how we're going through it with each other to get to sort of a consensus opinion. I find myself in a similar place to Kristen about the over specificity. I do like bringing it in line with the construction noise, but I do think the time limits and the distance are just something I think is overly specific and could draw something back. But I really like the idea of bringing the ordinance in line with the construction ordinance.
Thank you. Jackie, yes, you had some thoughts to share.
I just wanted to confirm, so this does not impact other bylaws that deal with noises that come from farms? Was that clear, or we don't know the answer to that? Like, I'm a farmer, I'm moving my cows because I have to, and they're mooing for 20 minutes, you know, and it's like 6 a.m. or, you know, 8 p.m.
It's our impression that this would pertain to every animal, regardless of whether it's a farm or it's not.
And
Right.
it's my understanding that applies right now. This wouldn't change that. So the existing more general bylaw impacts the scenario that you're talking about, Jackie.
Right. Okay.
If they moo within 750 feet of another dwelling.
For more than 15 minutes.
that is quite the move. I guess it's repetitive moves.
It could be a series of moves.
Some thoughts that I had. I mean, I agree. I do like the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. The 7:50, I kind of like that too. I mean, I'm in the discussion because we're saying 7:50, and that's getting a fair amount of people. If Norfolk gets more dense, then you're just encompassing even more people. So like, to me, the concern would be people with legitimate complaints would be outside of the radius. But if we're more dense, that doesn't seem to be a problem. So more people would then be included. So I can kind of get the whole 15 minutes thing. I know some comments were also made about it. I mean, it's true. This is based on the petitioner's personal experience, but she did go and look at several other bylaws. So this was clearly benchmarked against what other towns are doing. I hear what people are saying about the specificity. I mean, there's issues on either side. If it's too general, then perhaps you get nuisance complaints. And the impression that I had is that's what the petitioner and perhaps others were experiencing. Mike, you had a question. Yes, sir.
So, sorry, I raised my hand. I'm just getting to the same point, which is it seems like this is going to limit the amount of complaining and giving it at least some shape, as opposed to just anybody can complain for anything. So I think this is better. It may not be perfect, but it's better.
Many hands up. Jonathan, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll as often that I do, I'll take the contrarian view here. I'm actually not a fan of the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. limitation. Obviously, I appreciate that for construction noise, but let's look at the reality of what's happening today. Everyone's working from home, or certainly many people are. If there's no ability to consider something a nuisance between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. during the day, and someone ties their dog out to the tree and leaves them out there 24 hours a day, and it barks and barks and barks. So again, it could absolutely be excessive. It could be continuous. You could be within 750 feet and you have no recourse. There's no ability to file a nuisance complaint. And I think that this is actually too restrictive in all of those areas. I think, as Kristen said, I'm more of a fan of the general bylaws. I think this is too specific on all counts, both in the timeframes, in the distance, and the continuous for 15 minutes. I mean, I just fail to imagine that there's no scenario in which an animal could be deemed to be a nuisance between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. during the day. And that's what this bylaw says, is there's no such scenario during the day where a nuisance complaint could be filed.
Jonathan, can I ask you just a question then? Like, how do you feel about people making these complaints as they're like walking somebody's house and a dog barks twice? Like, I guess, like, what do you think? Like, I guess, how would you adjust, like, to fix the problem that I think is a problem?
Well, I think we need to put our trust in the animal control officer to adjudicate those, right? If someone fills out a complaint and it says I was walking by and the dog barked at me, that should hit the circular file as far as I'm concerned by the animal control officer, and we ought to let the animal control officer make those determinations. It's in their hands to determine what's excessive, right? What's a nuisance and what's normal animal behavior, right? I wouldn't want to prevent or limit anyone from filing a complaint, no matter how ridiculous it is, right? Because who are we to arbitrate what that is? I think we need to put our trust in the animal control officer or whomever is enforcing this to make that determination. So if someone's going to file a frivolous complaint about it, it ought to be treated as such by the animal control officer. But I don't think that we ought to be preventing people from filing what is non-frivolous complaints because there's too many restrictions in the bylaw.
Blythe, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just pulled up the current bylaw, and just to confirm, the animal control officer is responsible for enforcing the bylaw. So would have to enforce this section. So, and we haven't had a chance to talk with her in depth about how she would handle issues with distance and length of time, but we'll need to before town meeting.
To Jonathan's points, it would be interesting to hear what the animal control officer felt about whether this, she obviously is put in a situation where she needs to make adjudications, and I would be interested to hear her perspective on how this impacts, her ability to do her job as she sees best, Like, will this be a filter, and now she has less nuisances to worry about, or is this going to tie her hands per Jonathan's concern?
Hi, this is Susan.
Yes, Susan, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. This is Susan. Erica, before we vote, I just want to make one statement to you. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I completely respect how much work and time and effort that you've put into this. And I don't have an issue with anything that you're saying, and I feel terrible for you that this is something you've had to deal with. But I wanted to say that when I vote for what I think is best for the town as a whole, not for me, not for you, not for a specific person who lives on South Street, Seekonk, whatever. So I just want that to be clear, because I'm going to be voting no on this. And again, not because of anything that you've done. And I, again, feel very strongly that you are doing all of the right things. I am voting no because I want to explain this to you, because generally speaking, we don't have citizens who come and that we have to sort of explain ourselves to. I agree with Jonathan on this. It's limiting in nature, because I would love to own a farm. I would love to have farm animals, but I can honestly tell you that I live in a neighborhood, but I have conservation land. So technically someone could have chickens or roosters who live next door to me. If someone did, and their chickens or roosters were crowing all day long, I would not care that it was between 7 and 7. I would want to be able to say something. I understand that nuisance complaints are a pain in the butt. And for someone who has perfect animals who are acting in the right way, I hope that our very capable animal control officer does her job and says, this is a ridiculous complaint. You need to, this is normal animal behavior and you can't complain about that. So I just wanted to be clear with you on where I stand, because I didn't want it to be a surprise or you to feel like, you weren't heard. I just wanted to make that clear. Sorry. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Jackie, you had, no, I don't, did you have your hand up, Jackie? That was from before, maybe. Okay. Blythe, was there anything else you wanted to add here? Okay. Yeah, there being no other hands up. Obviously, the animal control, will the animal control officer be present at town meeting, to your knowledge, Blythe, to then speak to this?
Yeah, so we know that we need to be prepared to have town council opine on the legality of the matter and whatever research he needs to do to determine whether he thinks that the state would approve it if town meeting does. And then the animal controls officer's perspective, I think, is important as well.
Right now, yeah, it's tough. This is one of those cases where, like, I'm generally very interested in hearing, like, if this was a zoning thing, I'm interested in hearing what the zoning commission has to say, or if this was a conservation issue, want to hear the conservation folks talk. There really is, you know, no input from the enforcement mechanism, which this, a lot of the questions are all, or a lot of them, they relate to the impact that this will have on that. But I mean,
To see
yes,
if
Blythe, go ahead.
you can schedule her before town meeting and then wait to make your recommendation till then is an option.
Just doing kind of we do have a motion in front of us. Do the movers of the motion, I don't even know how to say that, the folks who make the motion, would it be, would we have a better outcome if we were able to get the town control officer's opinion to be heard? Or is the intent of the motion, we've heard enough and folks would like to have a vote?
Well, before they vote on that, the people who made the motion, I would just like to point out two things. Number one, I think that the job of I've said this before in other meetings, the job of the advisory board is to, I know we can make our motions on make our recommendations on town floor, but it sort of defeats the purpose of printing them in the warrant and giving people that information ahead of time. I do think that, and I've said this on zoning and other various things when this has come up, I do not like the idea of us not making a recommendation prior to the warrant being printed. I think that is, in fact, our sole role, you know, as the advisory committee. I also would like to point out that we pay the animal control officer, I'm not going to, I don't know, somewhere between, you know, $60,000, $80,000 a year, whatever it is, to be a police officer in this town. I'm not sure the exact number, and I apologize. I don't want to throw random numbers out there, to do a certain job. And that job is to know the difference between nuisance complaints and valid complaints, and know the difference between a dog is barking because they saw a raccoon and a, you know, goat is baying all day and all night long. That's literally why we pay an animal control officer, to protect the town and to handle these nuisance and noise complaints. I think that we should focus on, we certainly should make sure she's at town meeting. And I think that it doesn't hurt to have her come in, you know, next week if we want, but I still think we should make our recommendation. If it can wait to be printed in the warrant until after she comes, great. If it can't, I still think we should vote.
Susan, I 100% agree with voting tonight. Like, I completely agree that we should vote. I guess I'm just feeling like if we can do something to help the animal control officer not have to deal with, I understand the problems that everyone's saying with the law, but if we can do something so that they're not having to go out to deal with complaints that really aren't complaints, I feel like that's helpful for freeing up government agents to do what they really need to do.
One question that I have too is, I mean, assuming that Erica, you know, is correct about these being nuisance complaints, if these are nuisance complaints, then the mechanism for the town control officer to dismiss them, it clearly isn't working. Otherwise, why would Erica be here? So that's why I'd like to hear from a little bit more. But you know, again, assuming that these are things that shouldn't have gotten through, somehow they're getting through. I don't know if people are obligated, like every complainant, you at least have to send a letter. There's some grief going on here, and I think that's the desire of the petition here, is to try to have more meat and less distraction. Now, folks have brought up, have raised questions about, you know, does this hit that target or not? But I still think that is the intention, and clearly is not happening now to a degree that citizens are feeling the need to bring it forward. Yes,
I have a procedural question, which is,
yes.
What happens if this isn't a legal statute? Like, it bothers me that we're gonna take a position that may not be legally valid.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that there is a perfect order for things to necessarily go in here. The motion has been made per what Susan and others are saying. We do have an obligation, to the best of our knowledge, to proceed. I have no problem assuming that this, or at least the substance of it, would pass some form of legal review. And if it isn't, then we can, address that in future citizens petitions or whatnot. So
Just real quick to,
Yes, Susan.
go back to what Jackie said. Blythe, do you have any idea how many complaints were made this year?
Not this year. There is some good information in the 2019 town report. Unfortunately, we literally just switched the software in the police department from one to another in about the last 10 days. And so getting the historical data about number of complaints out is proving a little bit difficult. But there's not a terribly large number. And what I'm trying to find out from Hillary is how many complaints, how many resulted in a letter or a warning or a citation. But I know overall that, citations are not our goal. Fines are not our goal. More resolution is. I do have an email from her. Let me look and see if I can find it while we're talking.
I've spoken with Hillary in the past, not about this and for noise, but about dogs who've got, not me personally, but dogs who have escaped their homes or their confines. She doesn't even really get involved as far as holding the owners to task on that, unless it's more than 3 times in a year, meaning it has to be more excessive. Your pet has escaped multiple times from your residence, and she has been called, right? So at that point is when she steps in. So my guess, whether they were nuisance complaints or not, to have sent a letter to anyone, not just Erica, because I'm not going to speculate on Erica's situation, it would mean that it wasn't the first complaint, it wasn't the second complaint. It would have had to have at least been the third, in my opinion, based on conversations I've had with Hillary. And I think what she's doing in that situation is she's saying, I'm not really going to get involved, but I'd like to let this owner know that there are people out there, neighbors or whatever, that are upset, and maybe this particular owner will take it upon themselves to do something, just out of care and concern. I don't think she's actually saying like, hey, next step is I'm going to fine you, because it seems like they are nuisance, and it seems like Hillary is doing her job, meaning she's making a homeowner aware that there's these things happening, and trusting in the homeowner to handle it before it becomes a non-nuisance. It becomes an actual bylaw, thing, I guess. I don't know what the right word I'm looking for is. I apologize.
No, it's fine.
So
Blythe is
anyway,
still looking at
again, this is just my opinion. I would love to, it'd be great to hear from Hillary. The reason I made my opinion known prior to voting is because I didn't want Erica to think that it was a personal thing against her. I wanted her to understand where I was coming from, that when I can't speak for the rest of the advisory board. When I vote, sometimes I might personally support or oppose something, but I may vote differently because I think it's what's best for the town. And to give a specific example of that was the Pine Street zoning article last year. I voted one way, but then I supported it as the advisory board, but I voted against it in town meeting because that was my personal vote, not my job as the advisory board. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, because I would hate for her to think that we didn't hear her, or we didn't understand her, or sympathize with her in any way. I just have to wonder, like, how can it adversely affect residents? That's more of what I'm looking at.
Understood. Thank you. Blythe, are you ready to go yet?
Yeah, so I found the email from Hillary, so let me just read it off quickly. So just specifically to dogs, all this data is from the last year back to October 19th of 2019. Nuisance dogs, phone call complaints but no action taken, i.e. the caller talked to the neighbor and worked it out, 10. Unfounded complaints, 2. Letters sent out by the animal control officer about a barking correction, 19. written warnings 3, citations 2. Nuisance horses, 1 phone call, 1 letter sent out by the ACO. No other issues. Chickens, meaning hens, 2 letters sent out. Nuisance roosters, 3, handled via social media letter, follow-up emails from 1 residence. So I would say not a large number of complaints, the majority of them being dogs.
Understood. Thank you. Jonathan, yes, you had your hand up.
Yeah, if I may just direct one more question to Erica. You indicated in your situation you received a letter. What was the expectation to be done? Was it just a, hey, we want to make you aware that we've received a complaint? Is this something you can look into? Was there any kind of action required from you? Was there mention of fines if it happened again? Could you at least shed some light as someone who's dealt with this? Like what information did you receive from the animal control officer would give a little color for us, I think, to what happens in the process as it exists.
So if you can hold on 2 seconds, I actually have the letter right here. So bear with me 1 second.
There we go. And she's back.
Hold on a second, sorry. My headphones decided to get wrapped around my chair. So the letter is just letting you know that your animal is disturbing your neighbor. And then just, it's a form letter. And just stating that someone has complained. At this time, we're not citing you for any violations or state or local animal control laws. We're merely advising you that your animal is disturbing your neighbor beyond their endurance to ignore.
Okay, thank you. I mean, my opinion is it sounds like the process is working as is, right? There's no punitive action, there's no penalty. It's a friendly heads up, just so you're aware, right? If there's something you can do as a homeowner, that would be great, right? I would think that in order for you, whatever that next step letter would be, right? There's probably going to need to be a long number of complaints to get to that next step, right? So it seems to me that the process at least is working as it is, and we're not, people, again, if people are doing frivolous complaints, and complaining every day and those sorts of things, again, I would defer to the animal control officer to, as part of any investigation, to see what's going on. Is the animal truly doing this? Is this someone walking by, right? And again, adjudicate it appropriately. But all right, thank you for sharing.
One question that I have for you, Erica, is I've been thinking about a point that Jonathan brought up. The 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. window, I think you said that that was in line with the construction restriction language. Did you also find in other towns that they had a 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. or some equivalent restriction for animal nuisances, or was it only construction?
I didn't find any towns that specifically had timeframes.
Because the more that I think about the point that Jonathan raised is like if you have construction, people banging, and I mean, at least the construction has a limited time, and at some point they're going to finish, right? Whereas if you have a dog or an animal or something, I mean, that could be years. Which is sort of making me think about it a bit differently about the restriction to, because the question here is, peace and quietness and the expectation thereof. Is that appropriate for 24 hours? Is that appropriate during certain windows? And I think what this is sort of saying is, in the case of animal noise, your expectation for a certain level of peace and quiet should really only be between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m.
that's what I have to deal with, you know, listening to lawnmowers and leaf blowers and construction equipment and buses going by. Those are active from 7 a.m. until, you know, 5 p.m. So that's in my opinion, I feel that animals should be able to make their normal, usual noises between those hours.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Well, again, I really appreciate the thought that you've put into this and the research. Other questions that people have, other hands up? I don't see any. In which case, oh, Jonathan,
I'm
yes.
sorry,
go ahead.
one last comment, just to respond to Erica. I actually agree with you wholeheartedly. I think animals should be able to make their normal noises between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. But the way this is written is when they're making excessive and continuous noises that are beyond what would be deemed normal, people are then prevented from filing a nuisance complaint. That's kind of where I completely agree with you, right? Is people should be aware we cohabitate with animals, and we're a semi-rural community, and there's roosters in town, right? But I do think that this is too restrictive, right? And doesn't delineate between what are normal animal noises and expected animal noises that we just should live with and be neighborly about, and then what is excessive. Great, thank you.
And I guess the concern would be if a neighbor's excessive was truly normal, right? So someone was trying to, during those hours, pass normal off for excessive, but I guess back to the other point that, well, that's what the animal control officer is for, to make those kind of determinations. Okay, any other comments people want to make? Hang on, Mike dropped off. Let's get him back in here again. The vagaries of Zoom. Okay, he's back. Okay, seeing no other hands up, I'm going to call the vote. We will do this with the old roll call method. Okay, so we'll do this reverse alphabetical. Kiara, so again.
Don't forget.
Yes, go ahead.
Don't forget Kristen. Don't forget Kristen dropped off.
Thank you. Make a note of that. Okay. Okay, so again, the motion is to approve. So a yes vote approves and a nay vote does not approve. Kiara Moore, your vote, please.
Yes.
David Lutz. Yay or nay? You are muted, sir.
Nay.
Susan Klein.
No.
Jackie Katz.
Yes.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
No.
Michael Huff.
Yes.
Brian Beachkowski.
No.
And myself. Boy, I'm right on the edge of this one, man. I am going to vote no. I'm going to vote no. Okay, so, and Kristen is not on, correct? Right. So we have 5 no's and 3 yeses. So 5-3, the recommendation will be against, but I expect there's going to be a lively discussion at town meeting where the actual vote's going to happen. And I think we're all eager to hear what the animal control officer has to say. It's been said many times, but I want to reiterate it. Thank you very much, Erica. These bylaws are old. We do appreciate you coming, and this might be a preview of some of the discussion that'll actually happen on town meeting floor. So we hope you'll be, able to, that you'll also find this informative. Thank you so much. Okay, and Amy, you got the votes and such, okay?
I do.
Thank you much. Make sure we're on the same page with that. Okay, well, moving along here. Next item. My printouts have vanished. There we go. Okay, Article 1. Let me get back to our screen sharing here. I believe, Blythe, you had said that Article 3 and Article 1 were collapsed into a single consolidated article. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. That's correct.
Now, we, of course, voted on Article 3, I believe, last time, but we can, since that article no longer exists, we will focus on Article 1. So Blythe, do you want to introduce this or just have some?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So we have available to us 3 different pots of funds that we've pulled together in order to fund the items that we have for transfers. And I just wanted to go through those real quickly. As you know, in the spring, we made some very conservative estimates about revenues, and those state budgets especially is not finalized at that time. And so we went ahead, we passed the budget, we made cuts in various departments. Since that time, the state came out in August and said they were going to level fund Chapter 70 education money and unrestricted government aid. So those two together were just about $174,000. And then besides that, we also were awarded the grant from the state for the regional dispatch facility. And so our costs for running that for this whole year were completely covered. We didn't need the $95,000 that had been set aside for that. So altogether, those 3 sources of funds, we have just under $275,000. We also made a commitment in the spring that if we receive revenues back higher than we had planned, we would return those to the departments that had forgone them. And so when we put together this list of transfers, one of the key ones that we are going to include is $84,871 for the Norfolk schools. That's not all the money that they gave up in the spring, but that's their exact proportionate share of what this new money coming back will bring to the town. So besides that, we have identified a few other transfers to make that we didn't fund in the spring out of caution or have come up since then. They include funding the 3rd year of our commitment to do the work to meet our federal MS4 stormwater management permit, $50,000. We also want to continue to contribute to our OPEB liability. We put in just $25,000 last year and now want to increase it to 50. So that's in here.
Yeah.
We have had quite a run of legal expenses, 2 mediations. One we just had this summer, one next week, as well as public records requests, other litigation things going on, and not sure that our budget will sustain it to spring town meeting. So I want to add 30,000. The last thing that we'd like to do is to we cut the part-time 20-hour-a-week IT support person last fall when that position was vacant and we were looking to trim the budget. Our IT director has done a really awesome job keeping us all organized on Zoom, working remotely and so on. But it's been quite a slog and he's really having a tough time keeping up. So we've identified an opportunity with the town of Millis to share an IT person. They also need to bring someone in. They have nobody. They have a retired selectman who's retired from a full-time job as their IT person at the moment. And they want to bring someone on also part-time. So our goal is to share that person, us for 15 hours a week, them for 20, and then share the benefit costs proportionately. So for us, it gets someone to provide some backup and support for all the things that we need to do, and at a lower price point than doing it ourselves. So that's in there for 25,000. In the list that I had sent out last week, we also included $10,000 for document scanning for the building department. We brought our online permitting system up in 2018 and never had a chance to put very many documents from prior to that into the system. We've just been working prospectively. And we saw this as a perfect CARES Act eligible activity, is to be able to scan in and upload that information so that working remotely, which we are doing, our staff on any given day are coming and going, would be possible. And literally just this afternoon, the state finally signed off on that, and we'll be able to cover that cost elsewhere. So of the overall $275,000 in round numbers that we could put back in the budget, we're looking to put back just under 240. We're continuing to want to take a really conservative approach and not add anything back to any other line items in the town side of the budget, and leave ourselves some a little wiggle room so that if anything else transpires over the rest of the year, we can make transfers in the spring with the difference of about $35,000.
Do we have a transfer sheet for this yet, Blythe?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a transfer sheet, the spreadsheet that shows the transfers?
I thought I had sent it out last week. And I thought it was on the website. So let me look real quick.
Yeah, I don't see it on the
I
website.
thought I sent it out, but I'm not seeing it. So
If you have it, could you share your screen?
I'm sorry?
If you have it in front of you, could you share your screen?
I need to log into the town's system to do that. I'm not in it right now, so.
Understood. Well, perhaps we can forward this to people.
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to forward it first thing in the morning, but the overall is we have, without using any free cash or any other accounts except the MEC and the 2 state grants, we have $274,533 to spend, and we're looking to spend $239,871 for MS4, town council, OPEB, and IT salaries, as well as just under $85,000 for the Norfolk schools. We're not planning to make any transfers to KP. They have told us that they are in good stead with the budget that they have. And if they weren't, as you all know, it would take all 3 communities to vote to do that, and a vote of the school committee. And one of the communities is in less of a position to do that than the other. So KP has told us that they're thankful for our support on the shares of the CARES funds for their expenses for COVID, but they don't need assistance with their operating budget.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Blythe?
Todd, if you have that spreadsheet, could you send it along if you're at the office? Yes, thank you.
No questions, particularly about the funds being put back in? It's not uncommon for us to vote on the specific transfer the day of town meeting. I don't know if people feel this fits into the category of wanting to make sure that we vote and put our recommendations in the warrant. Comments on that, about whether people would like some time to review the spreadsheet before we vote?
Blythe, is this it? Blythe, is this the correct spreadsheet?
Got it, Amy. Perfect.
Okay.
Just what we learned, and I didn't have a chance to change, is that the 10,000 for the document scanning gets erased off the list. Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
not
Yes,
that
go ahead, David.
column 10 or row 10 is not
Row 10.
part of this technically?
So we're not gonna need transfers for that. That's gonna get handled with federal funds.
Okay.
State funds.
State funds, thank you.
Government funds.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions, or are people still absorbing this? Thank you for sharing. Any questions about, since there are no questions, we can take a motion on Article 1.
I move to adopt Article 1. Are we sorry, I meant to ask, there will be no changes to this in the next month?
I don't have a reason to add anything, David. And
No.
Todd, I don't think so either.
No.
Todd
I move
saying no.
to approve Article 1 as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded by David and Jackie respectively. Any discussion on the motion?
That was Susan.
It was both of us. We both spoke at the same time.
Oh, was it? Okay. I was saying, I was looking at Jackie's lips. They were moving anyway. Okay. So there being no discussion on the motion, we'll do this by voice vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, the motion passes, which brings us to Article 2. And I assume there's this is just unpaid bills. Are there any unpaid bills, Blythe?
No.
Excuse me, Arthur, before you move on to Article 2,
Yes.
Hillary Cohen jumped on to our call. I think she would like to say something. I know she knows we already voted. She just wants to weigh in real quick. If you could do that so that she doesn't have to stick around.
Of course, certainly. And apologies for summoning you like this, Hillary, but thank you for joining us.
Not a problem. I got a message to jump on, and if I can offer any input or any commentary, I'd be happy to. And, you know, I have commentary as far as the animal control officer and also a resident who is a livestock owner in Norfolk. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for me or if this has all been settled and handled already.
Well, I think we were interested in your specific take as the appointed town officer who is responsible for enforcing and taking action based upon complaints. We were curious what you thought of the changes to the rules by which people are able to make complaints, putting on the time restrictions, adding the distance, putting in the 15 minutes of the sustained noise activity. Was this something you found helpful? Just or not, or we were just eager to get your take on whether this greater specificity represented progress and improving your ability to do your job or something different?
So I don't think that it would actually benefit to have so many prerequisites written into the law, because it kind of pigeonholes what could be enforced and what couldn't be enforced. And I would say that 98% of all of my noise complaints in Norfolk, we have been able to work out, you know, without having to take any formal action. It's just working amongst the neighbors and also with the animal in question, certain parameters that, you know, I can suggest to the animal owner how to quell the noise so that it's not a public nuisance instead of jumping right towards violations and citations and court. I think it's a little subjective for having a perimeter of a certain footage for who could complain. And I think it could in the future be challenged as to what is, you know, continuous for a 15-minute period without actually having, you know, physical evidential proof, instead of just having, you know, the two parties be able to sit down, work it out, whether it's in my office or in the field, or if it does come down to that we have to go in front of a magistrate to work out a solution. We have done that as well. I think that the law, the way that it is, has worked quite well in the past. And I would be remiss to possibly add this type of law, because it might promote other people for saying they want to get, let's see, an animal that can be very loud, 5 donkeys and put them in their yard, and they all start braying and yowling at once. And that neighbor next door who may be 755 feet away. They wouldn't have the opportunity to complain. And two, I would rather find a way to work this out amicably, because a situation like that where somebody might actually seek out different animals and cultivate them on their residential property, it could actually, my perspective, it could promote some other resident in town to actually start bringing forward more legislation that would prohibit certain animals from different districts in town, which I think is a slippery slope when we're talking about the charm and the rural and the farming nature of Norfolk. And I think it might possibly affect a lot of people in the town that do have livestock. It potentially could be a negative impact.
Thank you, Hillary.
Yes, thank you very much, Hillary. Sorry, I was muted. Really appreciate that perspective. I'd like to make sure that we get back to Erica with sort of where this happened in the meeting. I don't have the exact timestamp, but just make sure that she gets this as well. Yes, Susan, you had a thought?
Yes, Hillary, not to put you on the spot, I say that a lot, but I am putting you on the spot. Are you going to be coming to town meeting just in case these types of questions come up? Because some of the questions that we had were just along these lines. We, the few people who voted no felt that, it would be too restrictive. It would keep people from being able to complain if it really was a problem. And we felt that you already handled things that were considered nuisance well, considering Blythe read us off how much action was taken in the previous year. And it didn't seem like it was enough to warrant changing the bylaw. Will you be at town meeting to speak to these things?
Sure will be, yes.
Or I said, okay, I should have said, can you be at town meeting, not will you? Can you be at town meeting?
Yes, I will be there, and of course, I obviously have two hats. I will make it, perfectly clear if I'm answering a question as an elected official or as a resident livestock owner as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. I'm sorry I wasn't here at the beginning of the call. I was out chasing a guinea hen and then dealing with a dog bite.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, thanks again.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
All right, shifting gears, back to Article 2.
I
Yes.
just wanted to explain that I reached out to her when the discussion first started to ask her if she would be available to come in and jump on and give us her opinion before we voted, but she wasn't able to get on until after we had voted. So I just wanted to explain why she came in later.
Thank you. Foiled by the guinea hen, if I heard her correctly. Okay, Article 2, unpaid bills. Is this how I'm reading this, Blythe?
Correct.
Do we have any unpaid bills?
No unpaid bills.
I hope we don't.
Okay, so looking at my notes, and Amy, if you could follow along with me, we approved Article 1. Article 2 is not applicable. Article 3,
Postpone.
I'm sorry, postpone.
You moved to indefinitely postpone.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to IP Article 2.
I move to indefinitely postpone Article 2.
Do we have a second? So that's Brian and David respectively. Any discussion on the move to IP Article 2 for unpaid bills? Seeing no hands up, all in favor of IPing, please say aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed, say nay. It is IP unanimously. So we have a yes vote on 1. We IP'd Article 2. Article 3, which was for last time, we already approved. This is the capital. I'm sorry, this is the Article 3.
It's the
Capital items, right? We approved this last time. Is that correct, Amy?
I would have to pull it up 1 second.
Okay.
Yes, you did.
If I could just make a note, the town administrator's comments still have the old article numbers.
I know, I need to change my numbers.
Okay, just making sure. Thanks.
Thanks, I saw that I saw that as soon as I looked at it tonight.
That's okay. It's a gigantic conspiracy to confuse me. I'm of course kidding. Thanks for everyone's work on this. Moving now to Article 4, which was 5, which we approved. So right, we approved both of the capital items last time by my count. Now we didn't act on 6, is my recollection.
You did that tonight.
Yes, I'm sorry. That's what we started off with, of course. Then we get to Article 7, which is Silver Fox Road. That we did approve last time. That was Article 8, now Article 7.
I think you still need to vote on that.
I show that as unanimously approved last time.
Okay.
Does anyone else remember?
Pulling it up.
Amy's pulling it up. While we're figuring that out, let's get into a discussion of assigning articles. Assigning articles. So going back to the beginning of our story, transfers. Do we have anyone who would like to take 1 and potentially 2 if there are any unpaid bills?
Article 8 was approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you, which is now 7.
Fox Road, yeah.
Very good. I saw a hand go up, Mr. Huff. Okay,
I'll do
thank
1
you.
and 2. Happy for that.
1 and 2. So Amy, can you please put Michael down for being the person who will write Article 1 and 2? Again, we're looking to get all of these write-ups to Amy and myself no later than, let's say, end of business on Monday. That gives us Tuesday to collate, which I believe is when you need it, Blythe, correct?
That'd be perfect.
Okay. We're all about the perfection. Not so much. Okay. Article 3 and 4, I think these would pretty much go together, capital. Would someone like to volunteer to talk about the capital budgets?
I'd be happy to do that if no one else wants to do it.
Mr. Lutz, the honor is yours, sir. Enjoy the capital.
I'd like to do the first one if no one's done that one yet.
The transfers?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, Article 1 or this first capital one?
The one where we're restoring the school's budget. I'm sorry, the numbers are escaping me on which one it is.
That's okay. Mike already volunteered for that.
Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
No, if you want to do it, Susan, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I honestly, I don't even know which article I'm volunteering for. You'd have to tell me because again, I'm on my phone and I can't zoom in on what the paper is, so I can't see it.
I just wanted to be helpful.
Yeah, I was just going to do the one for the school just because I have the experience with the school page, but I don't have to at all. It doesn't matter.
If you'd like to, it sounds like that Mike's more than game for you to then take the lead on that, Susan.
Okay, so which article is that?
Number
just so I
1.
know when I get number 1.
Article
Okay.
Number 1.
As long as Mike's okay with it, I certainly don't have a, any problem if he wants to do it.
Don't care about it at all. So happy.
Okay, so I'll do number 1 then.
We're doing 1 and 2 together. 2 is just
That's
the
fine.
unpaid bills that we IP'd, right? Okay, very good.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so now that's Susan, Amy on for Articles 1 and 2. And Mr. Lutz, Dave Lutz is on for 3 and 4, I believe, yes. Which brings us to Article 5, which are the committee reports, which we don't really do anything with. 6 are CPC discussion that we had today. Any volunteers to talk about wetlands, the joy of passive recreation?
I'll take that one.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan Hurwitz will handle 6, which leaves us with 7, Silver Fox Road.
I'll do 7.
Mike will do Article 7, and then our grand finale is the animal discussion we had this evening, which we voted against. Article 8, who would like to talk about animal noises and howling and clucking and such?
I can do that one as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. And we are good to go. Now, I will be writing a kind of cover letter for the whole thing, so I assume I'll have that for you at the same time so that you could put all that together. I think this is the shortest warrant I've ever seen when we've been on the, which I think we've earned after the last warrant, if I do say so myself. Okay. There being no other articles to assign, that is done. Do you have all that down, Amy? Any questions you have? You're good to go?
No, I have it all.
Fantastic. Thanks for keeping us headed in the right direction, which brings us now to minutes.
Amy, excuse me, sorry, 1 second. Amy, have you may have sent it. I tend to just put everything into my advisory folder and then access it when I need it. Have you sent the actual warrant just so I have it to read when I'm writing the recommendation? Or do we still need to send that? I mean, the new one with the new numbers on it, I mean.
The updated warrant was added to the invite for tonight. However,
Okay.
I can't forward it to you after the meeting.
Okay, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Minutes, yes, Mr. Lutz.
Amy and I have gone back and forth on the minutes from the meeting of October 7th, and I believe we have a final version that I've approved, and I would propose that we adopt those minutes. I'd make a motion that we adopt the minutes from October 7th of 2020.
Do we have a second?
Second. That's Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie. Excellent.
And then-
Any discussion
sorry.
on the motion? Yes, Dave.
Nope. Finish
Nope.
it and I'll discuss. I'm sorry.
Okay, seeing no hands up, we will call the vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
My comment was going to be the minutes from last week's meeting will be available. Are we not, we're not meeting again until the night of town meeting? Is that my
That
understanding?
is correct. This is it.
So we can either adopt minutes then, or we can do it at a later date. I will have those ones ready, as well as Sue has sent me, I believe, everything that was not approved from the spring. So we'll have 3 separate sets of minutes to approve at that meeting, just to let you know.
Excellent, thank you. And I believe we intend to meet the hour before town meeting starts. I think we've reserved that time, Blythe, or we still need to?
So I asked Nancy to reserve a space for advisory when she does the same for the select board. So we'll get back to you about exactly what room.
And can you remind me of the date that is?
November 17th at, and it's going to be at King Philip High School. Right now, it's the moderator's plan to have the meeting in the cafeteria. It's the biggest space that we can socially distance people indoors. I think we're going to want to try to keep our eye on what we think might be the, the attendance, and possibly consider the football field again if it's, not raining or snowing, just in case, because putting off town meeting this time getting the tax rate set really challenging. So hoping to be able to get this done on that night safely.
Very good. So our next meeting will be at King Philip, 6 p.m. on November 17th. And then town meeting itself starts at 7, correct?
Correct.
The usual drill. And note. Okay. That concludes the agenda and I believe our business for the evening, unless I see any other hands up or questions folks want to ask. Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Sorry, wait. Sorry, I was trying to get my finger on the button. The week prior, I'm sorry to discuss this publicly. I would rather not, but it doesn't matter. I guess nobody really watches these things. I'm having a very small.
Go ahead.
I'm having a small procedure done, a small surgery. they expect that I should be up and moving around by the end of the week. So I don't foresee an issue with me being at town meeting.
Okay.
I will let you know by Monday or probably by Sunday if I don't think I will be able to make it, and pass my warrant off to someone else. But I don't foresee it being a problem, but I just wanted to let everybody know there's a slim chance that that might happen. I have no idea what the recovery is going to be. I mean, I'm just going based on what they said it should be. So
Appreciate that. Understood. Thank you.
And I added this in the chat, but this is Kristen. Like, I'm just not doing large group activities indoors still. I know it's a personal choice everyone's making on their own, but if there is no outdoor option, I would be not attending in person. So that's why I did not offer to pick up any articles. But if there's anything we need to vote on that night that's critical, I can do that if maybe we could huddle outdoors. But happy to kind of make sure I'm doing my part.
Understood. Appreciate that. We will check in with the advisory committee prior to that, just as the town moderator and Blythe get closer to the event and more of the details are known. So thank you.
I'll just jump in while everyone's sharing information. I'm actually pregnant, and so I'm going to be checking with my doctor how she feels about me going to town meeting.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Jackie.
Wonderful.
That's
Wonderful.
awesome.
I just have asthma. That's not quite as exciting.
I don't know if it's exciting. I mean, sure.
Well,
I think it's exciting. I love babies because,
Yes,
you know,
I
I
think-
kept having, I have like a dozen. So, you know.
Yeah, I don't think we're the same
I'm all
person
for
in that way, Susan.
I didn't say I liked being pregnant or that I really like children. I just love babies.
Arthur, how are you doing?
Doing great. Melissa has not given birth yet, but we are waiting. Her due date's actually this Friday. So we shall see. I see that we're saving all the good news for the end of our meeting here. So congratulations, Jackie. And is there anything else somebody would like to announce before we adjourn tonight? Okay, there being no hands up, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. And a second? Okay, any discussion on the motion? I don't see any hands up. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Arthur,
Yes,
who seconded the motion?
it was Kristen, wasn't it?
No, Kristen
Did
Jackie,
the motion.
you second it?
Kristen did the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kristen did the motion. and then
I may have done it. I'm not sure.
I think it was
Yeah.
David. It was a
I think it
guy.
was David. I got the order wrong. Yeah, it was David and Kristen.
I'm just talking for the sake of being heard. So.
And this large platform and audience that we all have. Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.